think a lot of people were really confused. That's an incredibly loud, tiny kid. I thought turning the corner might drown out the screaming of that child, but no. A lot of people were very confused and continue to be by what's going on with Eric Adams. Yeah, I try to keep my cool with these people, but every single person who rides a bicycle on the sidewalk should go to jail. It should be treated as public endangerment. But anyway, you know, we had Eric Adams appearing on Fox and Friends with Tom Homan on Friday. And it was a very strange appearance. If people haven't seen it, I recommend you take a look. Because I was watching again, I guess it was from this morning. I don't know exactly when that show airs. But they have Peter Ducey's father there, you know, Steve Ducey. And he was talking to Lawrence Jones and Kayleigh McEnany. And Kayleigh McEnany is a lawyer, which is interesting. See, the funny thing is, I think that Steve Ducey has got a kind of like an old white guy being nice persona. And I don't mean to say that it's fake. He's just like an excessively nice old white guy. And likewise, Lawrence Jones has the new black kid, excessively nice, you know, kind of like professional office personality. And again, I'm not criticizing either of those guys. I kind of like both of them and appreciate their reporting. But the thing that was interesting is this morning, when they were talking to Kayleigh McEnany, neither of them were being impolite, but they kind of, in my opinion, slipped out of their normal personas and were kind of reporting more like witnesses. And I say that they were talking about Eric Adams and his appearance on their own show with Tom Homan, because he got more than a little bit combative with Peter Ducey or Steve Ducey, and he basically challenged Steve Ducey right there on the show. Steve Ducey correctly told Eric Adams that this whole thing is being dismissed without prejudice, meaning it can be brought back at any time, and is this sword of Damocles hanging over Eric Adams. And he was like, no, it's not. And then he told Steve Ducey, look, I don't get into legalese. You know, don't bother me with the details like facts. Don't need any of that, Steve Ducey. But anyway, Eric Adams went on and on to talk about how his lawyer, Alex Spiro, is one of the best trial attorneys in the whole country, and how could he possibly enter into a quid pro quo with with Sassoon. How could he enter? He's like, why did he wait 3 weeks to tell them about a crime? First of all, there's a lot of things going on there. Pretty busy here on the High Line today. See how we got all these tourists. And, oh, well, let's also make sure that we're live and that it's working. Because there was a lot of times, you know, we were getting disconnected and thrown off. Oh, it's so windy today, Brad, and cold. Well, look, people joke about the riding on the sidewalk, but obviously nobody takes it too seriously. I don't know about jail, but definitely you should be hit with a very expensive ticket. You should get arrested and processed. It should ruin your day. And it should really make you calculate whether you want to ride on the sidewalk or not the next time you attempt to do it. Because otherwise it's just, people are going to get injured. Anyway, the point is both Steve Ducey and Lawrence Jones, in my opinion, seem to they had a strong reaction this morning, and I thought that was important because those guys were in the room with Eric Adams just last week, and they were getting kind of excited talking about it. I think because they didn't trust what the guy was saying. You know, you get so much more information from a person when you're in a room interacting with them than just from watching them on TV or a video conference or whatever. Oh, you know what? Let's go down to the Musk end of this and see if they're protesting the Tesla store. There were crazy people going crazy at Tesla the other day. We'll see what's going on down there. But I'm very interested in Eric Adams because that was just the first little bit of information I was watching about it this morning. What is that? Fox and Friends, maybe? Peter Ducey's father. So they were just commenting. Right, so the other piece of that exchange that caught my attention, Kayleigh McEnany, I'm pretty sure, is a lawyer. And she was like, now wait a minute, adding up what's happening in her head. And this is my advice. People can take it or leave it. I don't really like to tell people what to do, other than to say you should become a sponsor on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. And thanks to the person who took advantage of that yesterday. You can still use your regular credit card on Odyssey until the end of February, when they're going to be changing their payment system. But for as little as $3 a month and a 58-cent Odyssey fee, you can support Crowdsource the Truth and Odyssey. But you can also go to crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. So Kayleigh McEnany was like, well, but wait a minute, they can still bring these charges back, and this doesn't make sense. And obviously everybody is all up in arms that all of these people from the Justice Department have quit. And what does that do? Well, it leaves Donald Trump's Justice Department in disarray. And, now Pam Bondi is on board with this whole thing. She said at a press conference last week, just after she got confirmed and sworn in and all that. I don't know why we have cones today. But she revealed at that press conference that she had no idea that this Eric Adams case hadn't been dismissed yet. And, people who were saying like, oh, well, that's just normal procedural, somebody says dismiss it and it's going to take a week or two before they actually do it. No, that is not the way that goes. Normally, that gets said, and then there's a motion filed like fairly right away. We've discussed many times how it would be a one-paragraph motion. Interestingly, the thing that was ultimately entered and signed by Emil Bove, it was several pages, which surprised me. The whole thing is quite surprising. So the bit of advice that I'm offering for people to take or leave is that when you see lawyers like Kayleigh McEnany or, I don't know, Jonathan Turley or any lawyers on TV, or if you are a lawyer or if you're talking to a lawyer and they're like, well, this doesn't make any sense, or that's not the way that type of thing usually works, blah, blah, blah. That's your hint to start looking for the Lawfare, because it means something weird is happening. So I should have thought of this much sooner, but as soon as some of this weird stuff started going down, you got to tune into idiots like Andrew Weissman and Norm Eisen and whatever, because you see, even though they are reprehensible individuals, and I realize it's difficult to train your attention on them without becoming nauseous, you can learn a lot from kind of, listening to them and looking at what they're talking about and reading in between the lines and all that. So Andrew Weissman went on with Jen Psaki, right? And basically, let me give you the bottom line up front, as many people like to say. I think this is a lawfare play, this release of Eric Adams from his charges, and it is intended to be an albatross that will rest around Trump's neck. This is the Teresa Solar Abad, Birth of Islands. I kind of like that. The color, it looks maybe sort of like an avocado. I don't know. That's art. But if lawyers don't understand what's going on, or like, I've never seen anything like that before, that's probably lawfare. And so think about it. Because see, Doug Mackey right away, and I'm not blaming anybody, it's tricky. Getting tricked by tricky stuff, it's hard to not get tricked. You got to make yourself hard to trick. It's not easy. There's a lot of people thinking about how to trick you. And look, no matter how good of a goalie you might be, 1,000 shots on goal, one of them is going in. Trump, for instance, I think, has been fooled. So who is this guy, Emil Bove? We had an article in the New York Times talking about just how strange this is. It says why Emil Bove wants somebody else to request that Adams be dismissed. I think the main thing is it would just be super weird for the number 2 person at the Department of Justice to do this. And it obviously makes it look like, Trump appoints this guy. This guy releases obvious charges against Eric Adams. And that's a problem. It looks like a quid pro quo. They're coming right out and saying that, where this is what Kayleigh McEnany came to on the set this morning, is that she was like, well, wait a minute, why do they need to make a deal with Eric Adams to get him to work with ICE and enforce federal immigration laws? That's the federal law. The state cannot make a law that supersedes federal law. See, I guess this became confused when we got to weed sales, because a long time ago, California, we got this big construction project down here. Oh look, a new entrance to the High Line is coming in. I guess that'll be here next year. Now we got saws and wind. The other part of that, when lawyers are confused theory, is that when what's happening in court appears to not make any sense on its face, that's also probably lawfare. So for instance, Kayleigh McEnany, she was kind of like, oh, wait a minute, why do they need to make a plea deal with Eric Adams to get him to abide by existing federal law? Everybody has to do that already. You don't need to give a non-prosecution deal to get the guy to uphold federal law. And I was thinking, yes, that's right, Kayleigh, excellent thinking. Why are they doing that? And the answer is, that's not what's happening there. Brian says Bove looks like a funeral home director. It's true, he does. He's a strange guy. And see, the thing is, everyone's like, oh, well, Trump appointed him, so obviously everything he does is Trump's fault. But the thing that's weird is Trump has only known this guy for a little more than a year. He joined the Trump legal team sometime in 2023. And see, this is really important. This whole mess around Eric Adams is the next chapter of lawfare. And I say that because I was watching Andrew Weissman speak to stupid Jen Psaki, and he's back to his kind of like sing-songy story time, laying out for you exactly what's going to happen next, because he's written the script. And you see, it was interesting, the first couple days, the last 3 weeks, we saw the first couple days that Trump came in, Andrew Weissman was kind of like hamana, hamana, hamana. Every time he was appearing on MSNBC, he looked like he was losing his mind because he didn't know what was going to happen next. And look, I've made this analogy before. We did a movie with Sorbo called Julia X. And I talk about this movie a lot because it was sort of like my highest rank in the crew. I was the cinematographer on that movie, and I had a lot of creative input on how the film was made. But the point is, when we got there, why is this closed? When we got there, a lot of time and attention had been spent on writing the script and everything. And this climax of the film, sorry to spoil it for people who maybe haven't seen it, this is temporarily closed due to repairs. But not to ruin the ending, there was supposed to be this big climactic fight in this house, and they had rented the house. They essentially bought the house from the person, but didn't actually buy it. They rented this terrible house for much more money than the house was worth. And so the owner of the house said, yeah, sure, you can burn it down as part of the movie. And that was written in the script. And then when we got there, the fire marshal for the town was like, no, you can't deliberately start a fire in the middle of this neighborhood. And that was it. Absolutely no, you can't do it. So they had to freak out and start rewriting the end of the movie right there. It's like we shot all of this stuff for this whole movie, and now something else has to happen, and it's got to make sense in the context of everything we've already done. But the reason I'm going into such detail here is because these types of things frequently happen. Some actor dies, some country that you were going to shoot your whole second half of the movie in has a war, whatever. Your movie relies on something happening at the World Trade Center, and before you release it, it gets destroyed, and you got to rewrite the movie in some way that you never anticipated and still release it and make it work. That's what you have to do. And in my case, they just had a big fight in the house and close-up of the fireplace and pretended the house burned down. So it wasn't that convincing. But when you're trying to fool everybody, and your movie is a Lawfare play, and your script is Donald Trump gets shot in July of 2024, and then that doesn't happen, you're improvising, and you got to write a new script as you go. So Andrew Weissman didn't seem to have his sides that day, weeks ago, when he was so nervous on camera and not knowing. But somebody's given him the new script now, and he's reading it. And the new script is everybody at the DOJ has resigned over this because Donald Trump ordered somebody to do something so crooked that they quit. But you see, what I think is really happening is, I think all of these attorneys are controlled by lawfare interests, and I think it's possible, I don't know, I haven't proven this yet, but I think it's possible that Donald Trump doesn't know Emil Bove that well, and that Emil Bove was planted on Trump, just like Felix Sater and Michael Cohen, to screw him up. And people might say, no, Trump is playing 5D chess, and he knows, okay, maybe. But I don't think so, because we got to go back to lawfare kind of basics. And we know that what they love to do, step one is they got to get you in court over something. So right away now, whatever you're doing that they don't like takes a back seat to you now being in court, whether it's civil or criminal. And all kinds of jeopardy arises for you there in court, but they want you to lose in court. They want to be able to get certain outcomes. So how do they do that? Well, if they can control your side of the equation, right? They want to control both sides of the caption, as they call it, right? Goodman versus the city of New York. That's the caption. If you can control both sides of it, you're definitely going to win. Well, how do you control both sides of the caption? You can insert fake defendants. If you're the plaintiff, you're the lawfare plaintiff. God, the wind. I didn't realize. So this is why it said 38, but it feels like 19. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? But it's the wind. So controlling both sides of the caption is absolutely a key to lawfare. And they can insert people who are fake witnesses, fake defendants. Remember, I've spoken about this. When Robert David Steele first sued me, he didn't just sue me, he sued me and Trish Negron and Susan Holmes. But remember, at that time, we thought Susan Holmes was Susan Lutsky, and Robert David Steele thought she was Queen Tut. So they sued them because that way they could go and do things, and they could say, oh, well, Goodman is responsible for the things that they do. And people listening are saying, oh, yeah, but Jason's not responsible for other people. Well, that went to other lawfare tricks where they had, during discovery, certain requests for admission where they said things like, oh, well, Jason is responsible for everything that these two people say because he writes the script and he tells them what to say. And they put that in, again, you know, this becomes another one of these elements of a stipulated reality where it doesn't matter if I am or am not responsible for what those people say. If they put it into a request for an admission and then get you into discovery default, then they say, oh, well, everything is admitted here, so Jason admits that he's responsible for what they say, so he loses the lawsuit. That's what they're trying to do. It's like a weasel fight where they're just trying to get you disqualified based on esoteric rules that they usually know you don't understand. That's one way that they can control. There's a Shake Shack here now. That's one way that they can control your side of the caption, is with fake co-defendants. People that you think are aligned with you, at least in the terms of the lawsuit, but actually aren't. So the other way, and this is the, shooting for the moon approach, is to control your attorney. We saw how they successfully achieved that in NatTas versus MSDI with Jonathan Snyder. And it might seem like, wow, that's really threading the needle that they got you to select an attorney of their choice. And I thought that for a long time, but you know what? Not really. Because when you think about it in terms of Donald Trump, given that when this all started, I never heard about Lawfare, never knew about Charles Dunlop Jr., the retired U.S. Air Force Major General JAG officer who basically codified Lawfare. I never heard of that guy until they started subjecting me to Lawfare. And so now, we've got kind of a lot of material. It reminds me of when I was studying 3D. When I was in college trying to figure out how to make 3D movies. There was just not a lot of material to study. Now there's a lot. Look at here you got a Tesla with a kangaroo guard on the front of it. That guy's interested in crashing into some people. A lot of these down here. What's everybody got these crazy front bumpers for? So this is interesting. I mean, just the other day we had a huge gaggle of people out here protesting Elon Musk, protesting Tesla. They're gone. You would think if those people were remotely dedicated to their cause, there would at least be some of them still here. I mean, this is yet another indicator that this resistance to the Department of Government Efficiency is just pure theater. Rand Paul. They still have the old robot. Yeah, it's surprising to me that there's nobody here protesting this today. So anyway, Kayleigh McEnany was very confused because she's saying, oh, why do they need to make a plea arrangement with Eric Adams to get the mayor of New York City to uphold the law? It's outrageous. And see, that's the thing. When a lawyer is confused by it, it's different than when a regular person is confused by it. Maybe this is Elon Musk. Not because a lawyer is smarter than you, but because a lawyer understands the parameters of what's actually supposed to happen and what isn't happening. They're harder to trick with lawfare on one level. But the way in which they get tricked is the way that lawyers get tricked by lawfare is instructive for students of lawfare. Because what she's basically saying is, and this, we go back now to the Andrew Weissman commentary with Jen Psaki, because Weissman is saying, oh, well, Trump is trying to force Eric Adams to defy state law. You can't put ICE into Rikers Island. It's a sanctuary state. So he's got Eric Adams breaking state law. This is what they're going to go to. They're putting together their stupid lawfare, indictment or whatever. This is how they're going to impeach Trump, that he's trying to get Eric Adams to violate state law. But there's something called like this superiority clause or something like that, meaning a state can't make a law that violates federal law. Like, the federal government could come shut down a marijuana store, even if it's licensed by the state of New York, because they could say, hey, it's against federal law to sell marijuana, but they don't. That's what I meant when I was saying maybe we got some confusion going with the sale of weed, because I remember hearing, maybe it was Obama, I forget who it was, but they said that, feds aren't going to enforce the law with regard to marijuana in California. And then that sort of like set the nationwide standard that for states that decided they wanted to decriminalize or whatever with weed, that the federal government wasn't going to do anything. But this is different because I don't know. I don't necessarily have an explanation as to why, but it is. And the federal government is saying, we're going to enforce it. So, in other words, compelling the mayor of New York to adhere to federal law is not the same as making a deal with him to break the law, which is what Andrew Weissman was trying to convince viewers of MSNBC and stupid Jen Psaki to believe. So Emil Bove, I'm very concerned about. I mean, the best hypothesis I've come to right now is that Bove is part of Lawfare, and that when he was helping Trump to defeat the Juan Merchan case, or just sitting there, he wasn't really helping him to defeat it. He was participating in it in the way that Snyder was participating in my case. You got to look like you're helping to defeat it, but in actual fact, you're playing goalie and you're hanging out there to make sure that he loses or to come up with the next, angle. Is what electric? Somebody's saying, is it electric? The car? I don't know. It's hard to keep up with the comments here. Federally illegal, right? Heavy metal hydro is still on the weed comments, but I mean, I'm primarily talking about Eric Adams. The weed issue is a separate issue. I agree the federal government should just make it legal, let people use credit cards, charge taxes, get rid of all this conflicting state and federal law. But in other words, this notion, and it's a bigger deal than just Andrew Weissman lying about it, because there's a lot of reporting, the New York Times and others, saying that Alex Spiro, Eric Adams' lawyer, that he's the one who initiated this, that he asked them to drop the deal. So Emil Bove, he started representing Trump in 2023. He's an interesting character. We've spoken about how he worked for Sullivan and Cromwell, which it's just a fact. It's the law firm that created the CIA. He was a clerk for Judge Sullivan in the Southern District of New York, and Sullivan, they obviously have a very close relationship because Sullivan presided over his wedding to a Chinese lady. Which is fine, but so Bove was there clerking for the judge in the Southern District of New York. Then he became a clerk in the Second Circuit, which is also Southern District of New York. And see, his father was I think the deputy New York Attorney General, and they live in, I guess, Seneca Falls, New York, which is up at the Finger Lakes. And there was some big cocaine task force in the Finger Lakes. I think his father was involved in a lot of organized crime and drug busts. Look at this. This looks like a very fancy nationwide tour bus for somebody. Somebody famous in there touring? Oh, here, we're on Twitter Street. So Bove is up there, and here I'm thinking, well, now wait a minute, I don't really know anything about the Finger Lakes, but doesn't Hunter Biden have the Finger Lakes tattooed on his back? And here this guy shows up in 2023, Bove. He's all over the Finger Lakes. His father was part of creating some kind of task force, some organized crime task force for doing away with a cocaine ring up there, upstate New York. So right now, again, I'm trying, people are like, oh, these people work for Trump, so I like Trump, so Trump is great, this must be great. I think what's happening is that Trump is so super pedal to the metal right now. I just don't see how he could possibly have a detailed handle on everything that everybody is doing. And you see, there's a funny thing about lawyers. I'm speaking for myself now, but I've observed this in other people. When you get to something like lawyering, or a doctor, or whatever, where you know nothing about it and you're in kind of grave jeopardy. You could go to jail, or you could lose all your money, or you could die, or be sick, or whatever. You sort of submit yourself to this person, and it's tell me what to do, you know? And if that person succeeds in gaining your confidence, like I did this with Snyder, you just pretty much hand the thing off to that person, and whatever they tell you, you do. There's even some comfort in saying like, hey, listen, my lawyer told me I can't do this or that. Look at this Suzuki Flipmobile. Is this a Suzuki Samurai? Remember these? It's a Jimmy. I thought this was called the Suzuki Samurai. Haven't seen this. Oh my God, look, it's right-hand drive. So this is some kind of Japanese car. Yeah, I haven't seen anything like this in a long-ass time. Wow. Doesn't seem too safe. Jimmy. That's an interesting name for a car, but yeah, so anyway, Bove, I think the plan here is, because you got to think about what is it that Andrew Weissman wants to achieve, and what is this stupid bullshit he's telling Jennifer Psaki likely to actually mean? Well, what they want to achieve, and he's telling you with everything that he says, they want you to think that Donald Trump has weaponized the Department of Justice and that anything that he does is an illegal use of the thing, and so therefore not valid. That way, when he brings criminal charges against Andrew Weissman and Jen Psaki, they can just say, oh, see, here he is again, weaponizing, you know, the Department of Justice. I've never eaten ice cream from this Oddfellows ice cream, but it just seems too... Oddfellows is not a thing I want to support. Right, so the Eric Adams case, Bove did all this. It was like, please don't throw me in the briar patch, Uncle Remus, or who was he? Who was the rabbit trying to tell them to not? You know, and he lived in the briar patch. Here, look, these dogs have shoes. he basically, they wanted it to be this big, outrageous overture where the second in command at the DOJ has to appear as an attorney. Look, here's the electric Hummer. This is kind of a disaster as far as sales go. This is them trying to dismantle Donald Trump's DOJ and make it impossible for him to use it to put the people who came after him on trial, because they know that that's what he's about to do. Norm Eisen, Andrew Weissman, Ben Wittes, all the criminals that George's brother defends. Here's the former Twitter. I don't think it is Twitter anymore at all. X. Fired everybody from there and moved to Texas. But this is a very dangerous thing because it's going to hang around. This was really disappointing that Pam Bondi didn't catch this. I have a feeling what's happening is Emil Bove is pulling a fast one. Now, here's the other thing that's interesting and what we can expect to happen next. I'm not trying to be like Dersh where I make predictions. And by the way, I realized something about that this morning. I think he makes those predictions because he has crooked inside knowledge. And he knows things that an honest person in an honest system couldn't possibly know. And so by saying those things before they happen makes him appear to be extremely smart and builds up this image that he's, you know, some legal genius that everybody should listen to, rather than the truth, which appears to be he's just a crooked asshole. But I think these guys know that there's manipulated outcomes here in court, and that's the predictions that they're making. But the prediction that I'm going to make is based on listening to Andrew Weissman this morning, where he's talking about how, oh, well, the next phase here is that Judge Ho, remember, this was a motion seeking leave, asking the court for permission, saying, can we end this case? And even if there was, a remote question when this all began, now that it's become nationwide news, doesn't that look pretty crappy? Now that it's become nationwide news and, half a dozen U.S. attorneys or whatever they are, prosecutors have quit from the DOJ, I have a feeling this guy, what's his name, Darren Ho? Judge Ho? He's got Ho's in all the different area codes. But I have a feeling he's going to say, well, now, wait a minute. There's at least going to be a hearing. Because that is what Andrew Weissman spoke about. And I think he is sort of articulating a wish when he says that. Also known as laying out the plan for actually what is going to happen. Because I'm sure Darren Ho watches MSNBC and has tons of lawyer friends from law school who might even include Andrew Weissman. They didn't go to law school together, but they might know each other. Who knows? Probably they do. Certainly Caproni knows Weissman, and she's also a judge who can tell Ho what to do, send him quiet little messages, perhaps like she did with, what's his name, Gershwin Drain. But he said, well, what's going to happen now is the judge still has to approve this. And when I left the apartment less than an hour ago, that hadn't happened yet. The case is still not dropped. But he said, well, the judge could call a hearing, expect that. And then from that hearing, they're going to generate all kinds of ridiculous things that will go into a ruling that Andrew Weissman and Norm Eisen and all these other assholes can go on the news and explain about all the terribly corrupt stuff that Trump's DOJ did. Then they'll fire Bove. The mess will have already been made. The stain will be there. The Albatross will be hung around Trump's neck for the next 4 years. And any time he tries to prosecute Vindman or Weissman or Eisen or Ben Wittes or people that I'm still not allowed to talk about, they'll say, oh, this is weaponization. The DOJ is corrupt. We need to impeach Trump for this. We need to stop Doge for this. That's really what they're doing, I think. I'm pretty sure. I was looking at this for a couple days and I couldn't quite figure out exactly what they had in store. But when it doesn't make sense, it's got to be lawfare. It's got to be. It smells like a lot of people are cooking hamburgers in this neighborhood. So what do people think about that? Stream is smooth today. Yeah, well, I'm not near those hotels where the Army is operating. I think they have radio equipment over there that's intended to screw me up, and it's possible without all of my varieties of stream-saving technology, we might not get anything. Don't know. Yeah, right-hand drive. We're still, I guess my chat is delayed from where I actually am in the city. But this is basically, I'm pretty sure that's what's happening. And I say that because nothing else makes sense. And I'm trying to figure out how Donald Trump met Emil Bove. I think you're going to have to go into personal discussions with people who know these guys. But right, so this is the thing. When you become a target of these people, whether you're Donald Trump or Jason Goodman, they kind of surround your universe and they want to know everything about you that they can know. This is the FBI, right? Caproni spoke about this, how they custom tailor a surveillance program to the target. So that involves knowing as much as possible about that person. They want to infiltrate your friends, get get you dating somebody that they control. They want to know everything about you so that when you say, oh, damn it, I need a lawyer, even the person that they say, hey, you should, call this person and ask them who could be your lawyer. We've frozen. Come on, there we go. Different types of different interference depending on which neighborhood I'm in. But when they sufficiently control everybody around you, which it seems like they were trying to do with Donald Trump since 1999 or 2000, that's what Felix Sater was doing there. And then Sater can, oh yeah, I know an attorney, he knows these guys, and he's not that smart, but he knows that business or that neighborhood or whatever. Okay, fine, that's how we hire Michael Cohen. So that's what I mean. With me, when I started getting involved in journalism, they had George latch on to me. George introduced me to Jared and Elizabeth Beck. I don't know that many attorneys. When I needed an attorney, I asked Beck. So isn't that convenient? As we start to build this fake world around Jason, more and more of the people that he knows are people they control. So when I go to them for help, this presents opportunities for them to do things. So if you're someone like that, inserted into the world of Donald Trump, Sam's Organic Deli has opened. Grand. But, while they're simultaneously filling your world with people that they control, they're making it politically unfavorable for any other lawyer to represent you. So you got a real limited set of choices for who's going to be your lawyer. And by the way, I'm a much less valuable and important target to them than the President of the United States, obviously. So the things that they're going to do as far as how much time they would invest, how many resources they would invest to try to get me, that's really going to be nothing compared to what they would do to a target like Donald Trump, right? So if their goal is to just screw me up in the Emmys lawsuit, fine, John Snyder can do that. But if you really want to embed somebody close to Jason, why don't you get him a lawyer who's going to win the Emmys lawsuit? Then at the end of that lawsuit, he's going to think John Snyder is a fantastic attorney. That's what happened with Emil Bove. See, Emil Bove got Donald Trump a win, and so Trump is thinking, hey, Bove is great. Let's make him the Deputy Attorney General of the United States. See, they've installed something on this block that just ruins it. But perhaps Bove was embedded early to gain Trump's trust and get to this high level. Or perhaps they had a whole script written, and when they got there and they said you're not allowed to burn this house down, they had to come up with something else. And this is the something else. Because, by the way, that situation that I described in Louisiana where we weren't allowed to burn the house down, it's not the one and only time that sort of thing ever happened to anybody. And I bet you, if you went back in time and checked out all the different times that occurred, sometimes you actually get a better movie as a result of the improvised writing at the end. So there's people who are experts at that. Some sort of interference has frozen the camera, so I'm going to take this moment to end. Oh, there we go, we're back. Just perfect timing. Become a sponsor on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, or subscribestar.com, or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. This is what's happening. Donald Trump has walked into another lawfare trap as far as I can see. And if Eric Adams is let off and Emil Bove continues as the Deputy Attorney General, which, Pam Bondi seems to have expressed firm support for him, we got trouble. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great